Hi, everybody. Welcome to Cultivator Connections, the podcast that we've started through Serica Cultivation. The point of this podcast is to help bring people closer. Like the name of our company implies, we're trying to help people grow food closer to where they live, learn, work, and eat. And this is one way that we're trying to do our best to serve all of y'all. And what we're going to be doing today is answering some common questions, talking a little bit more about specialty growing, specialty plants, and maybe a little bit more advanced techniques. So if you guys have any questions like that, hopefully I get a chance to cover it. The main topics that I'm going to cover are herb varieties and their uses, pepper growing challenges, microgreens and baby vegetables, seasonal growing strategies, and then ways to sort of start maximizing your yield as a grower in your garden. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Topic number one, herb varieties and their uses. So one way that this question comes up is you'll see there's a special variety of basil like holy basil or cardinal basil, and maybe you come across it on like a blog online, or you come across it when you're flipping through a seed catalog, and you're wondering what is the difference between holy basil and the common basil, which is usually a Genovese, or sometimes it's called Italian sweet basil. And you might be wondering, what's the difference? What are the growing conditions that I need to consider? Why is it more expensive? And I want to address that here. And this is a good example that can be taken into other herb varieties as well. So, holy basil versus Italian sweet basil. Holy basil is a little bit more tender. It has often used, you'll find it in like medicinal herb growing guides, and it's a little bit harder to find, even the seed for it. And it's kind of rare that you'll even come across that you'll come across it at all in like a grocery store. So if you want to start making these more sort of teas and tonics, and holy basil is one of the varieties that you're trying to use in those in those teas, your options might only be dry or to grow it yourself. So with a specialty like this, that might be something that's the only way to get it. So for specialty herbs, your options are kind of get dry. Like I was having a conversation last week with someone who wanted to grow motherwort, which is kind of calming. It's known to be calming and relaxing without it being like sedative or like making you sleepy. And I asked them, because they were making like teas and tinctures, I asked them where they were getting it now, and they said that they were just getting it dry and ground. So what they were asking me is like, oh, can I get it from seed? Like, can you help me find the seeds? And I had to tell them like, no, because motherwort, this one, it's harder to find the seed, but it's easier to find the live plant because it's propagated primarily from root division. So it's hard to find the seed, but you can find the plants, and I sort of started helping them search for the plant, where they could source it either locally or online. So that's a good example of like, if you want the freshest of that specialty herb, your only option might be to grow it. So that's for a lot of things that fall under the medicinal herb category. Comfrey, mullein is hard to find as a living plant. It's a little easier to find as a seed. And then there's more common medicinal herbs, which are like something like rosemary or common mint, like a spearmint or a peppermint. So just because it's got a special use that you're looking to use it in doesn't mean that it's necessarily hard to propagate or hard to find, but some of them are hard to propagate and hard to find. And that just the reason why they might be hard to find is because they're specialty. Like there's not much demand for it. For instance, like I grow more romaine and green onion than any other variety because more people want romaine and green onion than anything else. But I still am always looking to try and find things like holy basil was on our summer menu because I knew it was hard to find. I'm trying to incorporate when I'm picking the offerings that I'm going to be giving to other people. A lot of the common stuff that they're interested in, that everyone's kind of interested in, stuff that I grow for myself as well as the stuff that's kind of a little bit off the beaten path and can serve more people with maybe it's their first experience getting it, or they like can't find it anywhere else. Like a good example is on a whim, I started growing marjoram over summer, and I'm still growing it now. And marjoram, I don't love the flavor. It's like kind of has a unique, like almost soapy, kind of like how some people perceive cilantro as a little soapy. Which I don't as much, but I do kind of associate marjoram with a soapy flavor. But it's in almost every like dry Italian herb blend. They'll have marjoram in it. And one of our customers, a week or two into when we had launched marjoram, they were like, I can't find this anywhere. I can't even find the seed. And by doing something that I thought was a little bit interesting, off the beaten path, I was able to meet that customer's needs. So it's probably not only you or you in your area who wants to grow that one particular fun, obscure, like unique plant, herb specifically, because this is what we're talking about. There's probably other people around you, so it's definitely something worth like sharing with your community. Maybe even introducing people to their new favorite herb that they've never grown before. A good example of that is a friend gave me some seed for papalo, which is a Central and South American herb that's really hard to find fresh here. But they gave me the seed, and I've since been growing it year over year and saving the seed because lots of people in my community, I started introducing it into my cooking, and lots of people in my community can't find it fresh anywhere. So I get to give that out to like friends and folks around me where they can't find it. And so moving on to another question was, which herbs can I grow that will actually save me money compared to buying them fresh at the grocery store? That's a good question. So your really common stuff, green onion, cilantro, parsley, you're not going to save any money there. The biggest benefit is that you have them when you need them fresh. Like for me, when let's say like I just happen to not be growing cilantro or parsley at that moment, if I have to go to the grocery store, even if it's 50 cents or $1 for a bunch, which is more than I need, it's just frustrating for me because I'm like, oh, when I harvested parsley last, why didn't I replant it? So the benefit isn't cost, it's having it when I need it, as fresh as it can be. For those ones, that's green onion, parsley, cilantro. On the other hand, thyme, oregano, sage, rosemary, these things are so easy to grow almost all over the country, almost year round. Obviously, if you're growing in somewhere where it is literally frozen, you can't do it. You can't be harvesting off of your oregano then. There are techniques to keep your plants warm over the winter. I'm not that experienced in cold weather growing. Honestly, we're always open to suggestions and advice. So emailing us at info@or support@sericacultivation.com, even with just like, hey, I grow in cold climates, and or commenting on our social media. I grow in cold climates, and this is something that actually benefits me, or this is an approach that I've learned over time. I would love to learn that because that would help edify me and give me more information for if I end up going somewhere to try and grow in the cold. So yeah, I mean, I'm always learning no matter what about gardening. I've been doing it since I was a kid, and I love it, and I do it every day, but I still have plenty to learn. So yeah, I'm always open to suggestions and advice and anything that can help me become a better grower. But point is the things that can save you money, a little plastic clamshell package of time, and just because you need a little bit of time for your roast or your soup, it can, to me, it's so frustrating when I don't have that one herb that I need, and it costs me $3, $4, $5 for a few sprigs, which, knowing that once I have it and have planted and it's established, of rosemary, for instance, it's literally free for the rest of my life. Those hardier herbs, which are mostly in the Lamiaceae family, that's the mint and sage family, those ones are the ones where you can usually save money by growing them yourself, especially because you have them year over year over year, and once you have it, you kind of have it forever. Next, topic 2, pepper growing challenges. The question is, why are specialty peppers like shishito and Thai pepper more expensive, and can I grow them at home? So shishito and Thai are a little bit more specialty. There's more specialty than that, but I think that this person is asking based on in comparison to bell peppers or jalapenos. So bell peppers, jalapenos, those super common ones, even serrano, poblano, habanero, those ones can get a little bit more, like habaneros can get a little bit more pricey. But once you start getting into the shishito and Thai, then they can be harder to find and can be more expensive depending on where you are and the time of year. So the answer, can you grow them at home? It's kind of like yes. Yes, anyone in the States can grow pretty much anything if you put enough work into it. What I would recommend as a starting point is start them in spring, late spring, even into summer, so that you can make sure that you're putting on that foliage, the larger leaves, before it starts to flower and then fruit. That way you'll get more harvest off of your pepper plants. I started a habanero in I think August, and I got one really awesome jalapeno. It was delicious. Packed a really nice punch, really hot. But I started it so late that I only got one habanero. So my suggestion is, yes, you can grow anything at home. It just depends on how much work you want to put into it. If you want to have a better chance of success, it's going to come down a lot to timing, the time of year. That's the first starting point. The other thing is peppers, they're pretty heavy feeders. They want to be putting on a lot of large leaves, which means that they're going to be wanting a lot of nitrogen at the beginning. So going for an all-purpose blend or a vegetative blend before into your soil is going to help them get a really strong start. And then after that, you can start feeding them in with a more fruiting tomato pepper fruiting blend of organic fertilizer, or however you feed your plants. If you feed your plants primarily with compost, then you're not going to be making that switch. You're just going to make sure that, based on your experience with composting, if you've been feeding your soil with compost for a couple of years, you should have a good feel of how your compost, whether you're making it at home or getting it from somewhere else, you should have a pretty good idea of how much it takes to burn a plant, so how much is too much. And what you want to do with peppers, because they're heavy feeders, is you're going to want to just back off right below that and start feeding once the plant's established, has a nice strong root system. So probably not the first 6 weeks of the plant, you're not going to be doing that heavy feeding, but once it's established, it's got roots, it's got multiple stems and lots of leaves, then you can start increasing that feeding with your compost. If you're just getting started into composting, it's a good opportunity to start pushing that upper limit of how far you can go before you start burning plants. And burning a plant means that it just has too much, usually nitrogen, in the mix, and the plant can't take it. So it's getting like a toxic dose of nitrogen. That's more rare with, from my experience with home composted homemade compost. More often than not, I see underfed peppers that are underproducing when they could take more compost if you're feeding with only compost. If you're using an organic bag soil or a bag fertilizer, there is a good chance that you could overdo it. So start with the bag recommendation. There's often a low dose and high dose recommendation, and as the plant matures, you're going to want to push more towards that high dose. And again, if you want to get even more specialized, what you're going to be doing is feeding a lot of the vegetative growth fertilizer at the beginning. And then once it starts to put on flowers, you're going to start switching more towards that fruiting flowering. And that's going to be more phosphorus rich than the nitrogen rich vegetative growth fertilizer. So those are my suggestions. I hope that that's useful because, but yeah, I mean, I think the number one tip is make sure you're growing at the right time of year. That's my number one tip. That's how I've found I get the most yield. The other things you can add on top, and what you're doing with that is you're trying to get the most amount of peppers off of that one plant and the most delicious peppers off of that one plant. Either way though, if you're growing them at home and taking all of the care and consideration to have a really healthy plant, then it's going to be delicious. If not for anything other than just the fact that you grew it yourself. Next question. What's the secret to getting jalapeno plants to actually produce a good harvest indoors? Producing jalapenos indoors is an interesting decision to make to start, like right off the bat. My question would be like, is this the best use of your space? Is this the only way that you can grow peppers? I can think of maybe you really want a jalapeno and want to grow a jalapeno, and this is your only space, your only option. In that case, go for it. If the other thing I can think of is for some reason you aren't going to get a chance to grow outside in spring and summer, in that case I would say go for it. But if you have the outdoor space and it does get warm enough for you, definitely try to go for outdoor. The power of the sun is really hard to duplicate indoor. The amount of energy that it takes to actually do the photosynthesis that the plant needs is so much compared to what the sun produces for us for free. But if you want to grow indoors, despite all of that, and you're like, I still want to grow jalapenos indoors, to increase your yield, you're going to need to dig a little deeper into slightly more advanced pruning techniques. So what you're thinking is, because you're going to be using artificial lighting, what do I do to maximize my canopy so that the light that I'm paying a lot of money for hits every single leaf? So you're going to be taking a lot of care and consideration to push that canopy up and flat. And this is during the vegetative growth period. So you could spend 6 to 8 weeks in this vegetative stage, and the way that you can keep the plant in what's called keeping it in veg, meaning that it's not putting effort towards fruits or flowers, it's just putting effort to building strong stems, strong roots, and a strong canopy. You can adjust the light hours and adjust the light temperature. That's not temperature meaning like how hot or cold it is, like in degrees Fahrenheit or degrees Celsius. The temperature describes how much blue or red it has in it. So as you get higher up the Kelvin scale, towards 6,000, you're getting bluer. So what looks like, imagine like an office building where it's a super bright white light, that's bluer. And then imagine like a cozy lamp next to your bed that's more that orange hue, that's going to be lower, towards 3,000 on the Kelvin scale for the light temperature. And the more blue that you have and the longer you let that light run, let's say 16, 18 hours of on time with blue light, the plant is going to respond to that light duration and light spectrum to stay in vegetative growth. Once you have that really flat canopy where the light from your light source, it's going and it's hitting every single leaf, building really strong stems and leaves, then you can either, and there's some LED lights where you can adjust the spectrum, or there's some people will even switch out their light fixture for something that's more blue vegetative growth, and they'll switch it to something more red. They'll drastically reduce the light hours down from 12, 16, 18 hours a day on to 8 hours on. That hard flip of going from vegetative to floral growth is going to trigger the hormone responses of the plant to sort of almost start panicking and say like, okay, now it's time to put on flowers. And then they'll start going into flower and they'll start producing those hormones that say, all right, let's make flowers, let's make fruit. So at this stage, you've flipped from flower to fruit, or you've flipped from veg to flower. During this vegetative growth period, you can also parallel or like in tandem do one other step, which is kind of what I described in the soil growing, outdoor soil growing for the specialty peppers from the last question. It's a high nitrogen plant food for the vegetative growth stage, and then it's a high phosphorus plant food for the flowering, fruiting growth stage. That phosphorus is going to be used in the flower production and used in the hormone regulation of the plant. So, and at that point, you don't want to be putting on leaves. You want to have the plant putting all of its effort into getting sugars that are stored in its stem structures and produced by the leaves going straight in like a pipeline into your flowers and your fruit. Last tip around this whole topic is because we're looking for pollinated flowers to make the fruit, going along, and if you have decent airflow, sometimes the pollen can float around, but you're most likely not going to have a pollinator like a bee or a hummingbird to come along and actually touch the flowers. So go through and hand pollinate. And the way I hand pollinate, some people will use a paintbrush, which is more sterile, and if you're doing a larger operation, it makes sense. What I do is I just go and I touch the center of every flower, and the pollen that my fingers pick up, I transfer to the next flower. So I just go, and that's once, twice a day, every time I look at the plant. And I do this for my tomatoes outdoors. I'll go through and I'll just real quick, just touch all the flowers. Almost any flowering plant that I do. I also like it. It's kind of fun because you get to look more closely at the flowers and know that you're helping the plant. So hand pollinating combined with all of those efforts of choosing the right light spectrum, choosing the right duration for the on time for your lights, and then choosing the right fertilizer for those two main stages of growth, the vegetative or the flowering and fruiting stages of the life of the plant. I think my thoughts on this are that if you, for me, I love a certain part of this because of the challenge and the technicality and the sort of hobby side of it, where it's like I get to explore and build my skills as a grower, and it's something that is really fun to sort of problem solve. If you're just trying to increase the yield or the harvest, and you have a finite amount of time or energy or resources, I do think that you'd be better off if you can find a way to grow outside, to grow your jalapenos outside. But if not, I hope that those tips help. On to the next question. Topic 3, microgreens and baby vegetables. Are microgreens worth growing at home, or should I stick to full-size vegetables? I think most people who grow microgreens will say that it's worth it. I've grown them a couple of times. I don't personally love them. They're super nutrient dense, don't get me wrong. Everything that you'll find people talking about microgreens, 100% true. Super nutrient dense, super good for you. What I tend to try and direct people to is do you love it? if you're growing something, always start from that perspective. It's like, I love this because, like the jalapenos, it's hard to do and it's technical and it's interesting. Do it. I love this variety. Like for me, I always grow Cordoba tomatoes because I love the flavor and I love sharing it with my family. I love cilantro, parsley, and green onions, so I'm always growing cilantro, parsley, and green onions. I don't love, what don't I like to grow? I like to grow a lot of stuff, but I don't like marjoram, so I don't grow it for myself. So if you like microgreens, they're definitely worth growing at home, especially if you're going to be buying them, because it's really hard to get super fresh microgreens and it's really expensive because the business model of growing microgreens, and I've got friends who do it here in LA. The business model is really tough because you have to get the window between when you start the process and get it to the customer is really narrow. You've got like sometimes within hours if they've got restaurant clients and they need it at that perfect size. So it's a challenging thing to do for if you're running a business, even though it is profitable for lots of folks who do it. But if you're buying microgreens, it's 100% worth doing it at home. Stop buying it, do it yourself. Should you do it instead of vegetables? That's only if you like them more. Like I don't do it because I don't like them more. That's just my personal preference. I want to put my devotion, devote my time into the plants that I like growing the most. Next question is, how can I grow baby lettuce that's as tender as what I buy in expensive salad mixes? How can you do it? Just grow baby lettuce mix. It will be more tender because you're harvesting it fresh right there, same day. And what I would recommend is harvest either super early in the morning, get it washed and in the fridge before the sun's out, or harvest it right before it's going to get eaten. Because if you're going from your garden and you're not dropping that temperature super quick, so then the plant will wilt. So when I harvest baby lettuce mix for a salad, if I don't get it, if it's not early in the morning, if I don't get it into a salad in 30 minutes, I'll start seeing that tenderness go down. And the reason why the spring mixes are so tender is because they're getting that temperature down in the field as fast as possible. Every 10 minutes that the plant stays at field temperature instead of dropping down around 32 degrees, every minute decreases the shelf life of that plant. And they're really good at it. They've got it down to a science for sure. Yeah, so growing baby lettuce mix at home is just going to be tender. I'll grab, this is a Mistaconza mix from Franchi Seeds. They're an Italian seed company. And I don't know how much this jar was, maybe 30, 40 bucks, but you can literally direct sow this. So let's see if I can show you. I feel like this is gonna be a common part of the podcast is me showing seeds and trying to get the camera to see them. So that lettuce mix can get sprinkled, broadcasted into a 1 foot by 1 foot patch of your garden every week. And if you're just taking a pinch out and sprinkling it, watering it in, letting it germinate, come up, and you've got 4 square feet of your garden that are devoted to baby lettuce mix, and you're just cycling through that, you're always gonna have spring mix on hand, and it's literally couldn't be easier. Or if you're growing in a hydroponic tower, which it's really great. It's one of my favorite things to grow in a hydroponic tower because I just put it in, it's done in 3 or 4 weeks, sometimes faster, and I just go off and I just clip the whole thing off and I've got a salad done. Like no chopping, it's ready to go. So if you're growing baby lettuce mix at home, direct sowing small patches and successively planting them will always keep you in that baby lettuce mix. It's going to be just as tender, if not more tender, than what you get from the grocery store, and it's super easy. Or on a hydroponic tower, you've got your whole salad done right there out of one of the ports. Harvest it, cut and come again, maybe one time if you want, let it grow back, or just start another one and have like maybe 3 or 4 in there, and just that port for that hole that the plug that the plant was growing out of, those ones were your 4 salads that you wanted to get out of them. That's my thoughts on baby lettuce mix. Topic 4, seasonal growing strategies. Which plants can I grow successfully in winter using artificial lights? Lots of indoor growing questions. Which plants can you grow successfully? You can grow anything. Maybe not a tree because it's too big. You can grow anything indoors. The question is how much work are you going to put? How much work are you going to put into it? How much are you going to spend on your electrical bill? 1,000-watt light that can do a couple of fruiting vegetables is gonna cost. You're gonna see that on your electrical bill. But if you use thinner LED strip lights and you're growing baby lettuce mix in a sort of sea of greens and switching that out, that's going to give you fresh lettuce in the middle of winter for very low cost. We're talking maybe $50 in grow lights. You've got super fresh lettuce on hand when you want it in the middle of winter. The cost benefit of that, and those lights are going to be pulling maybe 50 watts combined if you've got 2-foot, pretty efficient. If you've got 4 2-foot strip LEDs, grow lights, by the way. There's a big difference between grow lights and strip lights like you'd have at home, and it's worth looking and trying to find one that has good reviews and is dedicated to indoor growing. But yeah, 50 watts, maybe 100 watts max. It's an order of magnitude less than what you might need if you want to grow a couple of actually healthy, delicious peppers or fruiting plants indoors. So sticking with those staples, your fast herbs and your fast leafy greens or lettuces, those ones are where I think you get the most bang for your buck, both with regards to how much you're spending on it and with how much effort you're putting in and how much you're getting out of it. So yeah, so that's what I would pick. That's my opinion on it. But again, if you love it, do what you love. Grow what you love. Next question, how do I transition my indoor plants to outdoor growing when the weather warms up? That's a good question. I don't do that much of it, but one of the keys is gradual changes in the climate. So you're going to want the light hours to match up as identically as you can. So from sunrise to sunset, your indoor growing plants should be matched completely. Next is going to be the intensity. So I've brought plants out from growing indoors straight out to full sun, even though I know that the plant can take full sun, and I brought it out without doing any transitioning into a shady area or shade cloth on top, and they got fried. You're going to want to match the light hours and then go from stages of a cooler, shadier area, gradually working your way into the sun. And it doesn't have to be 5 different steps of like, okay, it's a little bit more shady here, or I'm going through a 70% shade cloth to a 50 to a 30, and then now I'm going to give it full sun. It doesn't have to be that complicated. It could just be 1 or 2 steps where you leave it 5 days in the shade, and then 5 days under a shady tree, and then finally you're getting out into the full sun that plant expects. Just as long as you're taking some steps to not shock it from full indoor, like indoor under lights 16 hours, and it's 65 to 85 degrees in your house, fluctuating on average, to 90 degrees full sun for 12 hours from the 16 or 18 hours indoors. That's a huge shock. So just trying to minimize that shock as much as possible, and just sort of matching up. So you're just trying to synchronize from what you're doing indoors to what it is outdoors. Yeah, like I said, I don't do that much of it. I've done it for special cases here and there. You grow long enough, you kind of do a little bit of everything. But yeah, that's my tips. Make it a gradual transition as much as you can. You don't have to go way over the top with it, but make sure that there's some effort to synchronize the two. Number 5, maximizing yield and quality. What techniques can I use to get multiple harvests off the same lettuce plant? We talked about that a little bit in talking about the baby lettuce mix. For baby lettuce mix, you can clear cut for the cut and come again, just as long as you're leaving behind new stem growth below, and then let it do another push. That's for the baby lettuce mix. For something like a romaine, a butter, an iceberg that you want to continuously harvest off of, you're going to be wanting to pull off the largest outer leaves. And I do this if I'm making like a sandwich, or that's pretty much the only case where I'll do cut and come again on a romaine or a leaf lettuce or an iceberg or butter. Otherwise, that 4 or 5 leaves just isn't going to be enough for me. And I usually am not growing maybe the 6 or 8 lettuces that I would need to get one head's equivalent. What I would rather do for me personally is I would rather get to that full harvest, take the whole thing, and have, if I'm planning on always having romaine on hand, is just always putting fresh romaine every other week, once a month. I'm putting in a batch next to a batch. That succession planting is how I prefer to grow. But I know a lot of folks that want to do cut and come again, so they'll grow several romaine and they'll take what they need. Bok choy is another good example of, I prefer the whole bok choy head, but David, the other co-founder here, he loves pulling off the bok choy as he needs it, just once a week. He'll fill his hydroponic tower up with like half full, like 10 bok choy, and he'll keep going off of those bok choy for weeks after week after week. And that's his style, and that's what works for him, and that's what he uses in his kitchen. So I don't cook that way, and that's why I prefer to do it the way I do it. So yeah, if it's a bunched lettuce mix, it's a clear cut, and to let it do another push. And I would only do 2, maybe 3 at most harvests off of one plant for a baby lettuce mix, because at that point you're really pushing it and you're getting to maybe more bitter flavors coming out, and the bottom growth is getting so crowded that it's got potential to stay wet and potentially rot out a little bit. Usually just that one, or the one cut, and then when you come back the first time or the second time, is you'll see the plant starting to get a little bit more sad. And then leaf harvest of the largest outer leaves for romaine, iceberg, leaf lettuce, or butters, which I do a lot of for sandwiches, or if I just need a couple, if I'm making a wrap or something like that, and a couple wraps, and I want to use butter lettuce to hold the filling, I'll just go out and get 6 leaves of butter lettuce. 10th and last question, how do I know when my homegrown vegetables are at their peak flavor for harvesting? It's a broad question with specific answers for every single type of crop, but I think it gets to a question that lots of people have, which is, how do I know when to eat it? My answer is kind of like, without trying to make someone feel silly for asking the question, because it's a genuine question, my answer is, well, think about what sounds delicious to you, and then they'll describe it. They're talking about their Roma tomatoes, and they'll be like, usually I just get it from the grocery store, and it looks about like this big, and it's nice and red, and and I'm like, they picked it at that size because they know that that's what you want. Not that that aroma tomato is a good example of something that's picked at the peak of freshness, but it is kind of indicative of what the final Roma is going to look like. And then for Roma, I can say, start there. What does it look like at the grocery store? What does it look like at the farmer's market? Visually, that's what's going to sort of give you the indicator. And then there's more specifics, which is like the tomato. I prefer to let my tomatoes ripen on the vine as long as possible, because the ripening process is a little bit slower off of the vine. And like eggplants, I want a done eggplant before I take it, because I want those flavors to fully develop. Yeah, zucchinis are a good example of something you don't want to let get too big. The larger you let a zucchini go, the more the flesh starts to turn pithy, so like almost like a foam, and it's got a texture that just doesn't cook out. You want the zucchini to be that like perfect ideal, maybe 6 to 9 inches, but zucchinis can get 12, 16, 18 inches long and be totally inedible. So it's pretty plant specific once you get into the nitty gritty, but a good rule of thumb is just like, what does it look like at the grocery store? And this is usually first time growers of that variety. You kind of only have to do it once and then it sticks. So try growing that new thing, try harvesting it maybe a little earlier than you think it should be. Try a tomato when it's green. Eat it, and if you like it, then you harvest when it's green. If you let it go too long and it starts to rot out at the bottom, or bugs get to it first, or it's too mushy, or the zucchini is too long and inedible, then you know I got to be on top of it and harvest it when it's at that perfect size. Last example I'll give is okra. Okra harvests for a pretty narrow window, maybe 4 weeks of harvest for that plant, but it's pushing every day. And if you let that okra go an extra day, it'll go from edible to just a really hard, fibrous, like in a day. And you want to so you're going to want to be on top of harvesting that okra every single day when it's in fruit, when it's pushing. And that is just the way it goes with okra. And if you love okra, you know, and you've grown okra, you know that it's on you to be on top of it so that you can get that delicious harvest. So start with, what does it look like at the grocery store, farmer's market? What am I used to? Try that. And then be observant. Sort of try and take in what's happening as you're harvesting. I'll give one more example. The cucumbers, slicing cucumbers that we did this year, they were good. They had a good flavor, but if you let them go too long, the seeds inside would get too large, and it would get a little bit too watery on the inside. So it wasn't until I let the cucumber go to 8 inches on the first cucumbers that came off the vine that I was like, oh, it's a slicing cucumber, it's probably going to be like a market more, and I can let it go 8 inches. Nope. This one harvested best at 6 inches and under. And that's where it would be most delicious. And that's what I did all through summer. I was just going out there every day, every other day, every third day, and picking my cucumbers, because I knew that if they went a little bit too long, I wasn't going to like them. So taste what's coming off at different times. Remember for next year what you like. That cucumber example, I know that I prefer a larger slicing cucumber, so I'm just not doing that variety next year. I'm gonna go for a market more. So yeah, observation. Just try and absorb as much as you can and learn from every plant, and to take that into consideration for the upcoming years that you're gonna be growing. So that covers all of the questions that we had prepared. These more specialty plants and advanced growing techniques, they come with time. So this information, I hope, is exciting to people who are just getting started, who can look forward to what you can sort of graduate into. If you're just starting out, then just focus on trying to get those those fundamentals down, which is watering and being on top of observing your plants. So make sure that you're feeling the soil, making sure it's not too wet, not too dry, and you're out there interacting with your plants every day as often as you can. So you're in this awesome starting point where you've got so much new things to learn just from your own senses. And you might be eager to jump to the next step, but enjoy the time that where you're at with your gardening journey right now, because it's a cool place to be. Everything's new. And for those of you who these questions are useful to, I hope that I was able to cover them in depth enough. Obviously, can't spend an infinite amount of time on any one of these topics. Also, like, my experience is only is only as much as it is. So that's why it's important to have other growers, more community around you, so that where your skill sets need improvement, they can help contribute into your knowledge and your learning. Like I said, I'm learning more about gardening every day, even though this is my life and this is what I do and this is what I've been doing for a long time. So wherever you're at in your gardening journey, enjoy it. And thanks for listening to Cultivator Connections. I'll see you guys. Last thing, I'm going to be working to try, when I have guests here, ask them the most interesting plant that they've grown recently, or something that they're interested in growing upcoming. Last podcast, it was my brother Steven was the guest, and he said that his citrus is it's a mandarin tree, that's his favorite plant that he's grown recently. For me, I'm thinking about a plant that I'm looking forward to growing right now, and that's water spinach. It's Ipomoea aquatica. It's in the morning glory family, and it's also pretty closely related to sweet potatoes. The flavor is a nice, complex, like deep sort of vegetative flavor. So I think it's something that you could replace spinach in any use case. It's used in a lot of, like, the first place I ever came across it was in a hot pot recipe, and then I tasted some and I was like, oh, this is delicious. This is very interesting. So I think I'm going to be starting some kind of soon. It's getting a little bit cooler here. Weather doesn't change that much in Southern California, so I might just go for it. Start it in the middle of winter, see how it does, and then hopefully it takes off in spring. But yeah, I'm looking forward to some water spinach as the next plant that I want to grow. So thank you for listening. Thanks for tuning into Serica Cultivator Connections podcast. And I'll catch you guys next time.